Well, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone, wherever you happen to find yourself. My name is Carmen Mazzara, and I serve as Executive Director of APSIA, the Association of Professional Schools of International Affairs, to which all of your graduate schools belong. I'm very excited to welcome you to the first ever International Student Career Week. We will have wonderful programs all week to assist you as you think about the wonderful and terrifying process that is your professional job search. As we go through, each session will be available by recording afterwards in different formats. So please do check back on those if you need to revisit any of this content, which I hope you will. If you have questions for our speakers as we go, please feel free to put those in the chat. If you have any technical issues as we go, please feel free to send me those issues by direct message. And again, I'm Carmen Mazzara in the participants list. And so with that, I'm going to stop talking and turn the floor over to the amazing Marion Pratt, who put this panel together as part of a wonderful team of your career services colleagues who saw what a great contribution these sessions can make and how they can best be of service to you. So with that, Marion, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Carmen, and welcome everybody to this session. I'm very excited about going over some of the possibilities that you can be thinking about. I am the Director of Global Careers at Duke University Sanford School of Public Policy. So I will launch in to share my screen. Does everyone see that? Is that a yes?
Yes, we can see.
Oh, good. That's what I wanted to hear.
Yes, thanks.
Good. All right. So I've got all sorts of things popping up here. Let's do this so you can get full screen. So what I'd like to talk about here is just for about 10, 15 minutes, I'd like to take you through a series of slides here about the options you have, preparation for thinking about pursuing those options, and then some resources. After that, I will introduce our two wonderful guest speakers, one of whom chose the PhD track and then did all sorts of fabulous things after that. And then my colleague actually from who graduated from the Sanford School just 2 years ago, who continued, I should say, work with a finance corporation. And then we'll make sure we have enough time to open it for Q&A, if that all sounds good. All right. So as you are thinking about your future, I always suggest strategic directed approach. So think about your context, think about yourself, think about what you want to do and the different types of choices you have, and then why and why not you might want to follow them. So personally, I always work with planning backwards. So what do I envision myself doing or having achieved in 5 years? And then how do I get there? And just know, for all of us, without any exception, what you have in mind and what you're planning ends up being very different from where you end up, right? So, but for me, I just love the planning part, and I like having a goal to work towards. And if I get moved off or I choose to do other things, then so much the better. It's still my life. It just looks perhaps slightly different. So think about what skills, networks, and experience do you need to achieve the vision that you're thinking about in 5 or 10 years, or even next year. And then some wonderful advice we were given is to look at LinkedIn profiles of people who are in positions in organizations where you would like to be, and look at their skills, look at the other people they're connected with. How did they get from where they were to where they are now? And that will help you figure out, number one, whether you want to pursue that career still, or whether you want to do something else. And do you have the skills that are needed to pursue what that person's doing? All right. So the practical tasks. So of course, and always, update your resume, CV, and your LinkedIn profile. If you're looking for work, make sure you put that tag on your profile that you're looking for work. draft a targeted spreadsheet, right, of the employers and the jobs that you're looking at. I know we encourage, some of you had to do this, we encourage all of our students to do that because, at least personally, I don't have a photographic memory. So I could not possibly remember which alums I contacted from which organizations, when the due dates are for applications. So I love having it all in one place where I can see what I'm doing and how I can follow up. I know we emphasize this like crazy, and we'll be talking about it in the rest of the week too, is reach out to your alums to do informational interview. You can actually obviously reach out to anyone you like, but your alums are faithful to each other and they're faithful to their school, and they will, more than others, they will be more likely to reach back to you. And try to aim for, I know it sounds like a lot, but 1 or 2 a week if you can, or at least 1 a week, and keep those discussions going. Sometimes all you need is 1 of those to get links and ideas about where you might end up. Identify the professors whom you've had and professionals who are willing to write recommendations for you. It's really important to get those lined up early so that people know and can carve out time to do that for you. I think there are some professors here actually who, if they're asked, only a week in advance of the due date of that recommendation, they won't write it. So it's a very good idea for you to help others manage their time and enable them to help you as best as possible. And then again, on your spreadsheet or on your CV, your blueprint CV, I would have those people listed as well. And take advantage of the platforms that you have at your university that you might lose access to when you graduate. So we have, for example, a website and web pages that have dozens and dozens of materials that our students use to prepare what they need to apply for jobs. But when they graduate, they're going to lose access to that. So we suggest that they download whatever they need going into their post-school phase. So the first major choice that you could make in terms of work is to follow up and work at the former job that you had in your home country. It seems to me by far the easiest choice because it's set and ready for you. While you get there, you can use and should use your new skills and your new degree for advancement within your position, or to get a new position or move to an office or a different department. We strongly suggest that you keep networking, both ones that you've already made contact with at school, and then keep in touch with other colleagues as well. If and when you plan to leave that position or that job, do that well in advance. So look around, reach back to people. So a couple of my alums my students that have graduated have written back and said, I'm applying for a job, in the EU, what do I need to do, and the planning and all that. So start that well in advance if you plan to move on and from that particular job or a government or agency. So that's the first choice you have, or some folks have. So you could also look for a new job back in your home country. So what directions do you want to take that are based on your having a new degree and new skills, whether they be quantitative or qualitative? Update your employer spreadsheet. Again, there are new organizations that you might not have known about in your country before, and what are the contact names? For some of you, in the biggest schools, you will most likely in any major city in the world have an alum organization, right? So for instance, Duke has alum, I don't know how many, there must be hundreds of them in most of the major cities in the US and in most of the major cities around the world. So take advantage of that. That's an automatic network and connection possibility for you. And then talk to former colleagues at where you were working before to see what the changes are in the employment context. Because remember, for most of you, you've been out of school, you've been out of your country for a couple of years. Lots of things happen and changes happen fast. And then to see what kind of new opportunities might come up. So you could also try to find and look for a job in another country. So we have platforms, and I think they're fairly well known at most universities, like InterStride, that will help you pick out and identify employers that have country-specific requirements for applications and opportunities. There are a handful, and there are more being developed, of countries that are specifically looking for applications from job seekers who are skilled. And it's a whole variety. Lots of them are STEM skills, but not all necessarily. Follow organizations on LinkedIn that you are interested in. That is very important. And some job applications will even suggest that you do that immediately. Set up job alerts for those organizations so that you know that you can be pinged when something comes up and you can apply. And then improve your language skills where they're needed. If you're going to be doing international work, language skills are critically important. So a lot of you are also trying to figure out how to stay in the US. A job is one of the ways to do that, and talk to as many alums as you can who found work in the US. The range of possibilities is huge. So everyone's situation and path are different. So your path and your potential choices will differ from others. But it's really nice to know, what did these individuals do and how did they do it? And would that make sense to you? So very luckily, tomorrow's session in this series is about OPT and then academic training and H-1B work authorizations. So I will not go into those here. Just think to yourself about the timing of when you're going to apply, how much time you have to find work. It's variable according to those options. Keep track of potential employers throughout your academic years. So I know that all of you go to presentations, information that's presented by people from all walks of life. Take note of those and mark them down. Talk to the person after the presentation. There are just lots and lots of ways to keep lists of those groups, because you never know when you might be interested or when a job comes up with them. And then undertake an internship that may, not always, and not even most of the time, set you up for job consideration. Now, in this case, Soumya is going to be a great example, and she will tell you how that worked. But again, it's not guaranteed or even typical. And that actually goes for our US citizens as well. Some of them specifically work very, very hard to get a job at a particular organization because they know that's where they would like to be. And that does increase your chances of the possibility, but it doesn't always work. And then start the job search in late or even early winter of your graduation year. Every year we have a number of students who, because they're doing different things during the break, and then they get behind because of their courses, and then they come, in April or so looking for work. That is very, very late. It takes several months at a minimum to finalize a job from beginning to employment. So continuing education is the second major choice you can have, staying in the United States. And that is usually with a second master's, a little bit less likely, but most likely is what people apply for as a PhD program. So during the summer before graduation, and for many of you, that means while you're doing your internship, we also encourage you to identify programs that match your research interests. And there are a lot of schools here. So be prepared to do some pretty in-depth research on where you want to be. And I know our Saeed, who's our second panelist, is going to be talking about that and the realities associated with that. And then investigate programs external to the US. I just talked to a student who told me that I think he's applying to at least 3 or 4 PhD programs in other universities, largely because they're much less expensive, right? So take that in consideration. Most other graduate school is expensive in this country. It just is. Contact professors whose work you're interested in at these schools or centers. From our experience, if you establish a bond with them early, they can definitely increase your chances of both getting admitted and receiving financial support. I think a lot of students don't understand that. There are lots of applicants for PhD positions, and if you have a professor who's going to vouch for you and vote for you, it really can enhance your ability to get in. All right. A couple other things. Be prepared in your applications. You'll need transcripts, English language certificate or test ranking sometimes, personal statements, letters of application, recommendation letters, and we talked about that earlier. A research proposal, because in a PhD program, you're going to be doing research. Primarily, letters of motivation, graduate record examination, sometimes subject tests, your updated resume or CV, teaching philosophy sometimes, but also increasingly we're seeing requests for diversity, equity, and inclusion statements. And there are some options online to give you an idea of what you might be writing for those. As you prepare for your interview, think about yourself now as a student and even more as a scholar. So what do you intend to achieve through your research? And when you can talk about how your research intersects or complements other research that's going on at that center university, even better, because it shows you've done some background work on what is happening in that department. It's really important. And then be able to talk about things like teamwork and personal responsibility, finishing things on time. As Saeed will tell you, there are quite a number of applicants and PhD candidates who do not finish. And so showing that you are a person who can finish your work on time is very important. Of course, you'll have to talk about your research interests and your plans, why that particular school, because you have choices, right? In every policy or other kind of topic and area, you will have choices about where you apply. And so why this school? And then again, the teaching philosophy, if it's relevant, if it's a position where you are going to have to teach some classes, be prepared to talk about it. So, self-employed or a consultant also, talk to as many people as you can who have done it. Really, really must understand the pros and cons of working on your own. It gives you a lot of freedom and choice, but you really, really have to work hard and hustle to find consistent work. And you have to pay for your own health and retirement. Register yourself on employer career websites. Most of them have them. The World Bank does, many others do. And again, set up job alerts that will specify positions that match your skills. Keep up to date always on what your targeted employers are doing. That's how you find out what projects they're working on. I would post as much as you can on LinkedIn about your relevant professional and academic accomplishments, because people are searching and they will connect with you. The more you write in there, the more people can more easily people can find you. And then, of course, attend conferences and annual meetings of the organizations, professional organizations that are relevant to you. Give a presentation, but mostly you're doing it to meet with people and talk about what they're doing and to see what's available. All right, I think we're getting in just about the last one. So some of our students or grads end up working or temporarily taking time off to work within a family role. In other words, their partner, for example, has decided to go to school or work full time, so that you need to be at home. So that does not mean you stop in your career by any stretch of the imagination, right? So you can find short-term or remote work if the time allows and your responsibilities allow. Keep up always with the trends in your sector. Continue to network as much as possible. And as horrible as COVID was, this ability to Zoom has changed the nature of how we network. You don't have to be traveling now anymore. Attend conferences if you can. Keep carrying out research and keeping up to date on your policy or your research area. And then create a strategy for when your job search opportunity finally comes open for you. So those are probably not all the choices. There was many choices as I could think of that most of our graduates look at. So now is to list, and you'll be provided with it afterwards. You'll see it on the recording of just a handful of sites where you can find out more information about visas, about PhD programs, and the like. So keep questions in your mind when we get to the end of the session. But right now, I'd like to introduce you to our panelists. So Soumya Matthew is one of the Sanford School's most illustrious recent graduates of our Master of Public Policy program. And she's very humble about her accomplishments, even though she shouldn't be. She's currently a research analyst with the International Finance Corporation, and she has a keen interest in leveraging research-based evidence to improve policy efficacy in the field of development and specifically surrounding avenues of climate change. She is one of the rare international students whose extremely hard work during her summer 2022 internship at the IFC paved her way for longer-term work with the World Bank Group. She earned her bachelor's degree in economics from St. Stephen's College in Delhi and she has composed music and posted videos that address women's rights in India. So she has lots of skills and lots of gifts. So Said Kamakçı is an immigrant originally from Istanbul, Turkey, who has fallen in love with the beauty and liberty of America. And when you travel to different places and you've been in the States, you do think about these things. He earned his PhD and MA in history from Georgetown University, also a master's in modern Turkish history with a specialization in economic history from, oh dear, I'm going to mess this up, Bogazici? There you go. University in Istanbul, and then a Bachelor of Science in Mathematics and Economics from the University of London and from Istanbul's Bilgi University. And here you are hearing all the different types of skills from history and the humanities and arts to mathematics and economics, and he pulls all of this into his current jobs. His love for helping students and touching their lives directly in making the world a better place brought him to the career advising world and academia. He enjoys hiking, exploring new trails, watching and identifying birds, and I forgot to tell you that I'm also a big birder, gardening, cooking steaks on his well-seasoned cast iron skillet. So I will launch into, I think I'd like to have Soumya talk first, and she's going to answer a few questions about her work and finding work at IFC. And then Said has his own handful of slides to give you much more details about the PhD option. So Soumya, are you ready?
Yes, Marion, I'm ready.
Great. All right. How did you get interested in public policy?
So just give you a brief background of everybody who's listening to me today. I am from India, and then I did my schooling and undergrad all in India. And then in this country currently, public policy as a course is not very known, and it's still booming. So the first school started by IIT Delhi. After that, it has started being in talks about the course. So initially, when I was applying for courses in public policy outside India, main reason was to get out of the country for this opportunity, because India did not have that many schools where you can apply for public policy specifically. So, however, I was still exploring, given my undergrad was in BA Economics Honors from Stephen's College, Delhi University. That gave me a bit of exposure of what else I can do with this degree going forward, having economics as a background. So moving forward, I had an option to do an MBA, which usually people do, or going into any other accounting work or public policies, very few of my seniors were pursuing. So I went ahead and talked to them about it, if they really like the course, what are the further job opportunities after this course, and what are the other schools available. So there was a lot of research went into, and I definitely did not know I wanted to do public policy in my master's. but I definitely spoke to a lot of people, my professors and my seniors, to just figure out a decision on public policy. And then I think Duke was one of the schools that I have applied to. I'm really interested and keen going in. So, yeah.
Thank you. And what specific, while you were here, what specific skills did you pick up at Duke in this program that you're now applying to your work at IFC currently?
Yeah, so that's again one thing which I would say, from my background in economics, I did not have writing skills. So that was one thing which I learned at Duke from the scratch, I would say, from the scratch. And that's I'm being using in my international work. When you when you write a lot of reports, when you write a lot of memos to your senior management explaining things, and you write legal documents as well, like you write board papers. So it's very important, and learn a lot from public policy course. Uh, Another thing was, I was also focused on quantitative skills. Some courses I really wanted to have that as my strong foundation. I had always been interested in quantitative evidences, policy making, things like that. So I made sure I have that ground even in my master's. So I did take econometrics and statistics, which definitely helps me understand what's going on and connect the dots when you talk about macroeconomic trends and things like that. So that was also very important. Yes.
Perfect. So at what point did you know or think that you wanted to work for an international organization?
Yeah, so that again started when I was looking for what masters I want to do. So initially, soon after my undergrad, I started working in a private sector consulting firm in India. The firm basically solved business problems of pharmaceutical companies. I realized this private sector was really much advanced in tech side of the things, and given I had background economics, I really wanted to come back to my field of studies and then employ the same level of technology, same level of advanced work in this field, in the development sector, because I'm sure that's going to help the sector very much in solving the problems that they do. Um, so that was the switch that I had wanted to go into development side. So first option was international organizations who does things at a global level. So I did not want to stick to a country level, or probably that's also a great option to get into policy think tank and research organization, in fact with the government. But doing this course, public policy, again gave me a hint of international development. It's a great place, like international organizations, a great place to finally get an exposure of different kind of issues around countries. So that was key motivation. Yeah.
They are, and it is a wonderful choice to make. Now, you had your choice of all kinds of internship possibilities while you were here. Did you specifically target IFC and the World Bank Group for your internship?
I was specifically targeting international organizations. I did apply to other organizations like ADB, which is against Asian Development Bank, Regional Development Bank, and then I did apply to UN, some positions in the United Nations, and UN Women as well, UNICEF, the World Bank itself, and also International Finance Corporation. So my target was always international organizations because, firstly, very briefly, my degree was a non-STEM degree. So then applying to a private sector did not promise me to get a full-time job opportunity, given that I just have limited a number of work time during the US. With the STEM degree, you have 3 years. With non-STEM degree, it's just 1 year. So that really affects in which organization you want to apply to. So that's why I was more inclined towards, international organization because of the visa status as well.
So, when you were working at IFC, how long did it take you to figure out that you might be interested in staying with them?
Right. So this is also very interesting because I started so I worked with a development impact measurement department, and I landed a job in the same department itself, however, in a different team. So when I was interning, I was in a team which invested in financial institutions like banks and in a private sector of any emerging economy. Um, I started liking my work because it has a quantitative aspect to it. So the work that they did is basically measuring or quantifying the development IFC's investment is making in an emerging economy. So something that really conquered to me is like my background economics plus my interest in quant side of the work. So I really, though this field was new for me, I did not have any background, but it was easy to pick up given the courses that I had taken in public policy. So yeah, that's how it went, and I'm still liking the work, so I'm glad.
That is very important. So my
Yeah.
last question would be, and I know you're very humble, but what are like let's say the top 2 things that you did that summer that you think put you in a good position for getting a longer term contract?
Right. Again, the first thing I would say is just to open to explore the different kind of work that you do, because that opens many opportunities for you to apply to different things. I know we are sometimes very specific on what exactly we want to do. Like, say, for example, we just want to do monitoring and evaluation work, or we just want to do some research work. But when I was interning with them, I definitely proactively asked, give me any kind of work that I can help you with, because I also want to know if maybe I'm interested in that work, maybe I'm good at that work. So I think open to different kind of work, or be proactively asking for work. I think that really helped getting me more exposure and also visibility, so to say. The second thing I would say is networking is the key. I think once you start working in a team, you just interact with 1 or 2 people. But if you get into an organization which is as huge as like World Bank, I think there's so many people working around you doing so many interesting things. I think it's very, very important to know what other team is doing, what other department is doing, and getting to know their work. And then when I say networking, I think it's also important to keep in touch with them. It's not just one-time communication with them. I think when you're building a bond over time is also important. So they help you when you're really looking for a job, and they do remember you because you have created that bond with them. It's not just a one-time conversation, right? I think
Absolutely.
networking and being open to work is 2 things I would say.
Absolutely. Well, and you did it. So congratulations. It's not an easy thing to do. And I know you worked extremely hard or they would not have invited you to apply. And the
Thanks.
application process was very, very difficult too. She did not walk back into this. She had to apply. And it was
Yeah.
like multiple interviews and all kinds of written documents and exams. So it's just been consistently hard work. So thank you Sonia, so much. And I know we'll have a lot of questions. There's some coming in the chat. But
Yeah.
right now, Saeed, if you want to share your slides, he's going to talk more about the PhD track.
Yes, thank you very much for the introduction, Marion. So this is Said. I am originally from Turkey, Istanbul, Turkey. And so I grew up, in a country, which is underdeveloped, but it had a glorious past. And I looked up that past and the history and then the present day and lots of economic crisis. So I just thought it was an issue of economic underdevelopment. And then I first went into economics, math. It was also good for me to convince my family, who wanted me to be a dentist like my father or doctors like most of the other people in my family. So economics still looked promising to them, and they had no idea I would later switch into history fully. And and then I can talk about my journey later maybe, but then all the way. And when I came to PhD, I actually came to Georgetown as an international student, for master's and PhD. We had a joint program, and I wanted to be a professor. So I'm asking here, why PhD? This was me. It was my calling in life since early childhood. I thought this is what I will become, and I didn't know the reality is I will just come into in the next slide soon. So this was all me. I went into PhD, and I wish somebody told me before. So I think my perspective is informed by my own experience. So that's what I will tell for the time being. And but this is one option, right? So you want to be a professor, this is your calling in life, then it's a good option maybe. Or you have no other option, And you just want to start the program, explore, see what happens. You don't want to go back home, and PhD is your plan B. Or maybe you want to pursue an industry career, but you want to have a PhD. You just see many people with PhDs in that particular industry, and you think this is a good investment. Or maybe you have so many people around you who wants you to do a PhD, or they want you to be an MD or JD. MD is very common in my culture, and a PhD is kind of something, at least a doctor. My father always wanted me to be at least a PhD, if not MD. That's not why I did, but this is also very common. So different options, right? But once you are going into PhD, there are some realities you should be aware of. What are you getting yourself into, right? This is an important question, and I have an economics background like Somya, and so the numbers, I'm always interested in numbers, and they speak for themselves. So I got the latest data from Indeed, from a survey they had 2024. Basically, the lowest salary for professors is like $46,000 dollars. Highest is 193,000, but the average base salary for a professor is $94,000. Around $94,000. $635. This is America. So in US, this is the data they have. But there are some other realities that we should look into. One is how many of these people, all these professors, salaried professors, actually have tenured or tenure track jobs. That's only 27%. Largely, professorship is defined by what is called adjunct trap, the adjunct trap. So you fall into this trap and you just stay there. 73%, as you can see from this data, they are adjuncts, right? And 25% of the adjuncts, they live on public assistance like food stamps and so on. Actually, half of them are eligible. It's just they don't want to accept it. Maybe they have family, others, supporting them. They don't receive it. So adjuncts usually receive, $3,000 to $7,000 for one course for a semester. I know this from experience. It's very hard, and then you don't get any benefits, no healthcare, nothing. And then, you need to teach 4 or 5 courses a semester just to pay the basic bills. And also, another data, the faculty who are in tenure track positions. So they are not just the 27% of those who started the PhD, because there's a large dropout rate. So only 2 to 7% of those who started PhD are actually now in tenure track positions. That's a very small number. And you look at the success stories, because the professors we see, they made it, but like so many people just didn't make it. It's like the startups, right? The startups success story, people looks at, everybody looks at Elon Musk, but he's just one, nobody sees those who failed. So this is the reality. And then there is also growing literature about, what can you do with a PhD, what is in a PhD and what comes after. I have a book, this is Living Academia. So some of my data came from there. It's by someone who actually did this. And there's a national debate. If you follow LinkedIn, LinkedIn newsfeed, my LinkedIn newsfeed is, full of all these different authors, PhDs. Some of them can't find jobs. They are venting about not being able to find jobs. Others, they had jobs, but, they are giving some advice, or so many people in between. That's a big debate to follow and to be aware of. Another book, again, The Graduate School Mess. I think the name is telling, by Casuto, and again, another big name in this debate. And again, his point is it's too long to complete, and there's a dismal job market for PhDs in the end. And since so many PhDs are now having difficulty to find jobs, there are also people who promise them jobs. And there's a debate about this too, whether, these greedy, quote unquote, career training and career, coaches, career training organizations, companies, whether they are helping these PhDs. So there was a big debate about cheeky scientists, and they got 2.8 stars on Google reviews. I think that's something. So it's like, or they also have 2 stars on Yelp. So many people venting about them. But, this is not the whole story. I'm not saying, okay, this is the story, don't go into PhD. This is just something to be aware of if you are thinking about going into PhD. So why and what kind of PhD, right? So this can actually be a plan B for international students. Because PhDs, if you have the connections, if you build the connections, if you talk to the right people, if you get into the right program, usually they come with a tuition waiver plus some form of stipend, teaching or research assistantships. If you go to especially R1 universities, top research universities, they are not paying you a lot, but they are paying you something, just enough to at least survive. And of course, you can think about the income losses you are going through and so on, but still, finishing a program debt-free is important. I realized this in America. There's just so many of my friends, classmates, they had debt even from the college. I didn't have any debt. So this is important. It's a way to stay. And also, what is in your calculus? Like, what values matter? So, for example, if it's freedom like me, or maybe money, right? So, and then this is lacking in your country, well, then staying in US, no matter what, might be an option. I used to tell my parents, I would stay in America even if it takes me to work in a coffee shop like Starbucks. I would say Starbucks. My mom would say, don't say that. And I actually ended up doing it for some time. And I worked in a bakery, I made coffee, and I learned how to use an espresso machine. So, well, if it's important for you, yes. And also the timeline, application timeline. I think the PhD application timeline is helpful because again, as Marion talked about this, you start in the summer, you contact, network with people, you get your GRE done by the September latest. I advise taking earlier, these exams in, midsummer at least, so that you can take again if you don't do well in one take, so you can do retakes. But, basically you finish applying. The latest is like early January, but usually, most of the schools, December, beginning of December, mid-December to late December. And you don't apply like to hundreds of schools. First of all, you can't afford this because they charge you fees. And second, it's just not like feasible. And there are not that many schools that, for your niche, you just focus, on a number of them you target. So 10 to 15, maybe that's what usually people do. I applied to 5, got into 3 with full scholarships and got waitlist for 2 others. But 10 to 15 is good. And then you hear back them early too. It's like mid-February to early April, right? So this gives you a chance to choose if you have other options. So you can still apply for a PhD. And even if your heart is not there, but if you want to have like as an option, and then you can also apply for jobs and then see what happens, right? So you can choose in between. So PhD is kind of helpful. Also, I talked about issues like the basically grim job market, the bleak job market, prospects for PhDs. But this issue is also being addressed right now by a number of groups, organizations, schools. For example, at Princeton they have grad futures, Pew futures, at Pew futures actually at Johns Hopkins, specialized graduate career centers like Laura, for example, one of the organizers of this panel. They have a couple of those at Georgetown. They have a graduate career center. They have a number of graduate career centers, actually. So if you look into those programs, where actually there's a structured program or support for PhDs to find jobs, after graduation, which means you have to be career ready during the PhD. You can't just, wait to finish and then look for something. So then it's also, maybe a good option. So and to sum up, that free early application and this. And one last thing I didn't want to put into my slides, but if you get into a PhD, usually it includes a form of master's. So if you pass your classes, do some project, even if you decide after 2 years, this is not your calling, you will probably get something in the end. So you'll get a degree. So that's also, good idea, just even if it's something you don't want to do anymore. So these are my slides, and I am leaving the floor to Marion and also the rest of you for your questions. Thank you.
Say thank you so much. We have already a few questions that were written in the chat, and then people can speak up if they like. So let me see what they were. So the first one was, and either one of you can respond if you like. What is your opinion about going back home and applying remotely for jobs in the US or elsewhere if we could not finish the application process after graduation? And what would your advice be on that? Is it more challenging to go home and then apply from home?
I would advise talking to the international student and scholar services of your university, Because from a legal point of view, I'm not sure if that's even possibility. Like you just leave the country because you start the the OPT process. You have then days like running. The clock is running. So I'm not even sure if this is an opportunity. You might go back home and then apply and maybe try to come with a different visa, but that might be harder. So just if you want to use your OPT status, I would just check with a with an International Student Scholar Services Office. So I can't comment on this. I can't say do this or not. Sorry.
I
Soumya,
totally agree. Yeah, so I think it'll be good to stay in the country where you are applying, because I think that gives you a lot more exposure to go meet people directly, network, talk to them, and then meet them in person, which becomes a key after a point in time, right? So I think, and of course, like some technical problems, like maybe with the visa thing, you probably need your employment authorization card before you can come back to India. That might take a time for a while to come back, and you might be just stuck in your own country. So you have to really sort those things out first. Technically, if you can go and come back, and there's no dependency. So yeah, make sure you talk to your visa services and career advisors for that.
And I'll also use my career advisor hat. So even for jobs in America, even if you're an American citizen or green card holder, so people care, hiring someone who can start immediately. Like, or they always ask this question, right? In the applications, when can you start, right? So usually they expect you to say, let's say 2 weeks after the offer, which is like, if you have another job that, that's a time grace period that, you can have with your other employer. That's why we also advise students, to use a zip code from like maybe an area they want to find a job. If you live in California, but you want to work in DC, even just using California zip code or, as your location may not help you, because you might already be eliminated, and some people who are the locals whom they think who can immediately start can get a preference. So just if you have time zone difference in a different country, plus you are an international student, let's say, even if this is possible from legal point of view, it won't be very practical. It won't be looking great from the employer's perspective. So they usually look for locals they can easily reach, have the first call, and then maybe bring them for an in-person interview soon, once they want you to come. So that's not, I think, also a very good idea from career services point of view.
We have another question that was in the chat, and I think we have more coming in now too. What is your opinion about taking jobs that are not directly related to your field? Would a field change be impossible later on? It's a good question.
Yeah, so I talk to students like this. For example, we have students from different regions. Let's say an engineering student wants to work in a semiconductor industry. It's so hard if you are not a citizen, national security issues. You can't work in a company, even if it's a private sector, because they work for the government. They will not hire you for that, right? But I advise them, maybe you work for like signal processing, some different field in the same company. So in public policy, it might be one field that maybe that's not your calling, but you are working for a large company, large organization, which does both of these jobs, right? So if you start with one that maybe you don't like as much, but you can do well, and you are accepted, you get the job. Well, after some time, after you solve your legal issues, you become green card holder, citizen, and you gain enough experience in this company, they would love to keep you. They wouldn't want you just leave all the company. Retention is an issue right now. So you can maybe first ask a small project, some contribution, like from another field, and slowly try to pivot. Because what are your other options? If it's unemployment or totally unrelated issue, like the unrelated job, then it's not a good idea. So I would advise looking into those, and if you can find something that is related to your field in the same company.
The next question is directed. Oh, go ahead, Soumya. And then the next question is directed at you, actually.
Oh yeah, so I was just gonna add to that, like I think it wouldn't be that hard to pivot to other field, because now most of the skills are transferable. So make sure that you make use of that when you make that pivot and change your field.
So the next question says, Catalina asks, Soumya, thank you for sharing with us your experience. Similar to your story, I'm also planning on applying for a summer internship in a multilateral organization in the US. Do you have any advice for the process?
Yeah, the first thing, be prepared with your material, what you have to submit, like CV and cover letter. That's very important, not keeping that for the last moment and sending your advisors for a quick review that even they won't be able to like advise you so much that you can make different changes, a lot of changes in your cover letter. So be prepared with all those basic things first. And that also includes LinkedIn, which basically people directly come and see your LinkedIn if they are interested in your profile. So be prepared with all those things. Coming to international organizations, yeah, as Marion also mentioned, there are a lot of link alerts, job alerts, internship alerts. The World Bank is going on right now. I think 31st is the deadline for World Bank internship. So make sure you know the dates and plan ahead of your time. So yeah, I think that's key first things, I think I would say.
And Soumya might, of course, knows better. But also, if you work for World Bank, IMF, usually you don't end up paying taxes in the US. And I think your visa situation is different. So it's not like the same green card. So that I believe it's easier. So that might be an advantage to work for an international organization.
Yeah. So very quickly, if you're working in an international organization, you work on a visa called G4 visa. I'm happy to talk about it later off the call, or we can connect later. But yeah, that's something to note also.
I don't see any more questions in the chat. I don't know if I don't see any hands raised either, but feel free to continue to ask questions. Just wanted to tell you too, while I continue to look here, that, I got a PhD knowing that I wasn't going to go into academia, actually, because I was in the Peace Corps and it completely changed my life out of undergrad. And so I knew that I wanted to go into development. And in some cases, if you want to be a technical expert, rather than a project manager, having a PhD is helpful. And it opens you up in some instances to a number of very interesting postdocs, which I was able to take advantage of as well. And I ended up going to USAID for quite a long time. So Carmen has a question. Oh, here's another one. Let me see. Yeah, Rebecca writes that she's going to be holding one of our sessions this week is on G4s on Wednesday. So you can learn a lot more there. We have one here. Thank you so much for both speakers. I'm a Fulbright student doing my master's in international affairs at Texas A&M. Since my field of study is so varied, what sectors should I look into and land an internship for the summer? Yikes. That's a very broad question.
So, I mean, I would advise meeting your career counselors at Texas A&M. I'm sure you have great counselors, and having a process of discernment, just to discern, and developing a strategy instead of, someone right now telling you, or go apply to this and do this, because it's also about you and your strengths, and then also the practical aspects. Where are those programs? Which of them are accepting interns, and so on. So I would advise meeting a career advisor, career coach, and having a one-to-one session and talking about options and details. And because I don't want to mislead you. And I want to add something to just Marion said about PhDs. So the competition is increasing, by over time, right? So in Turkish, there is a proverb. It says bread is in the mouth of the lion, which basically it means, it's hard to earn your bread. It's difficult. I say right now the bread is in the stomach of the lion. It's no longer in the mouth of the lion. Because I read so many memoirs of professors, others like Turkish Americans who came in 1950s, 1960s. Things were much more easier. I talked to people who came in 1970s, 80s, 90s. Economy was different for Americans, so it's for everybody. Right now the competition is very high, and I see so many job postings. They want PhDs. It's like not required, but you have 5 years, 5 years of experience, this amount of this, and then in the preferred qualifications, PhD. So many policy organizations in DC right now, they want PhDs.
That's
So
right.
it's because, everybody else has everything, because they get hundreds of applications and they need to eliminate some of them. So I'm not saying just do PhD for this, but it's becoming the new normal. Back in the day, college, having a college degree meant a lot. Right now, it doesn't. That's why so many small, colleges, liberal arts colleges, they're dying down, out. They are closing, because in the past, like 100 years ago, when they gave a degree, it mattered. Meant a lot. Right now, big competition. Masters is now everybody has a masters. So PhD is becoming okay. Well, now I have a PhD. People, and then also PhD is not enough. Right now, so many professional certifications. Like, I advise also strongly looking into those certifications in your field, because now ed tech, higher ed, there are so many providers. Just having also a college degree, master's degree, PhD degree is no longer sufficient. Maybe data analysis, data analytics, maybe UX design, maybe software development, project management, project management institute, PMI. So those professional organizations certifications are also very important. Of course, in addition to real experience, connections, and networking, not just certificates. Just another degree will not help if you don't have the real world experience or connections. But things are not getting easier. It's getting more difficult for everyone. And so in this case, I think PhD would make sense for, let's say, 10 years, 20 years later, we don't even know where we are going, but I'm seeing an increasing demand for PhDs.
Next question is a very good one that a lot of students have. So regarding work at the multilateral organizations like IFC, what are your chances of getting an interview if you just send in a cold application without knowing someone in the organization? Would one stand a chance of making it to the interview stage?
I think that's a little difficult in an international organization because this organizations are giant, like they work very differently than a private sector would do, where the in these kind of organizations the hiring process are not streamlined at all. They are very decentralized, and each team hires separately and they have a liberty to do so, unlike private sector where they have a proper hiring time and everything in a year that they go through. International organizations hire you throughout the year as per their needs of their projects. Coming to cold reply, again, it's very important to talk and meet to the right person with similar background you're interested in and similar team, because um, many people do cold emails, right? So it's very important that you really tailor your yeah. It's very important for you to tailor your emails and things that you want to really keep it targeted to the person you want to really reach out to. So it's where chances are very slim if you just do cold emails.
That's where networking is so
Yeah,
critical. We have
exactly.
another really excellent question and comment here. So thank you all for speaking today. I'm a first-year graduate student, and my question is regarding the multilaterals and international organizations. No surprise. While you were in, you meaning Asomia, I think, while you were in an international organization, did you feel burdened or slowed down by the more bureaucratic processes? And were you able, despite that, to grow significantly as a young professional? That's a great question.
Yeah, that's a very good question. So this is something which I was also talking about initially working in a private sector. And I saw how things move pretty much faster and much more efficiently, and how they're quick to adopt to changes in terms of tools they use for any kind of analysis and any software, for example. But when it comes to international organizations, of course, there's a lot of interaction with other stakeholders such as government, which definitely slow down a little bit of the process. However, when I talk about IFC, which is International Finance Corporation, it's a sister entity to the World Bank Group. It basically deals with private sector. So it invests in private sector rather than working directly with the government. So IFC compared to the World Bank is pretty much faster, I would say. And the things do not really get slowed down. But when it comes to World Bank, there are chances. But opportunity wise, it's great. You can jump to any of the projects that you want to. People are very flexible, at least in my experience, to give you the work that you want to do. And then I definitely see much growth in this field. So there's no issue with the career growth. That's it.
And I will add into this. So networking is very essential, and I advise Steve Dalton's the 2-hour job search, to everyone, just to read, to get an idea about how to have a strategy. And it's the same for PhDs too, because now so many applicants from all over the world, and you have to really stand out. I think networking is important, but just networking alone cannot do much, right? So you have to be really good in what you do. So it's like a subject matter expertise. I think it's extremely important because of the competition. So networking comes on top of subject matter expertise, like having those real skills, technical and soft skills together, and then networking. And for example, I got my second job, consulting job, from a friend, I had, who works for a media production company, but I had the subject matter expertise and quickly, apply some of my skills in another field, in a media production, game design, just using historical background, cultural background, and then turning into consulting. And then usually now the consulting jobs, especially the small jobs, they come, they work with agile methodology. So they give you a small task, you do well, and then you get another one. So they also want to see how you are doing. Just with networking, you can't get those. Even if you get something, it will be small, so it will not lead to something else. So I advise investing in what you are doing well, and then being very well in your field. And in addition to that, networking. I know it sounds like a lot, but that's how it is.
Well, if we don't have any other questions, I think we can wrap this up. The participants were great today. Thank you, panelists, for all your help, and everyone asked excellent questions. And so I just really appreciate your contribution, and your paths were really quite different. So it was so interesting to hear.
I will add something with the networking. So I'm already getting LinkedIn requests, which is great. But when you're adding someone, if you send a random request, like I'm just adding this person and I don't know that person, well, that person's likelihood of accepting your request or connecting will not be as much, right? Just something small, oh, it was nice listening to you in this event or seeing you in this conference, and I look forward to being in touch or something. That goes a long way. Usually these people, get so many requests. So again, standing out, it's very important, those social skills. And, I strongly recommend, maybe, reading books, thinking about this when you are approaching people. And again, Steve, to finish with something from Steve Dalton, he says, if you ask for advice from someone, you will get a job. But if you ask for a job, you will get an advice. It's like he really nicely puts this together. And I think so asking, people about their experiences, they like talking about their experiences and what they have done. And I think that goes a long way in for you to also get something you like. Thank you. It was nice talking to you all.
Thank you. Thanks, Marion, for having me again. Thank you very much. I see Dr. Nadia is also here. Thank you very much again for having me.
Well, it's our pleasure. Thanks for. Oh, we got a poll here before you leave.